Officer James Daniels wasn't a bad cop. At least, that's what he told himself every morning when he pulled on his uniform and laced up his boots. But years on the force had worn down his idealism. He'd seen too much. Too many criminals walking free because procedures weren't followed. Too many calls where the truth was blurred by politics or paperwork. For Daniels, the world was black and white. Suspicious people were troublemakers, and troublemakers needed to be dealt with swiftly. That afternoon, the sun was beating down hard on the busy streets of the city's west side. The grocery store parking lot was crowded with customers coming and going. Officer Daniels sat in his cruiser, idly scrolling through his phone, waiting for a call. But a figure caught his eye, a young man standing alone near the entrance, looking calm but watchful, with a phone in his hand. Daniels squinted. Something about the man didn't sit right with him. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact, or the nervous tapping of his foot. Maybe it was just another day, and Daniels was looking for a reason to justify his instincts. The man's clothes were clean and simple, a blue button-down shirt, dark jeans, nothing flashy, but not out of place either. Daniels grabbed his radio and spoke quietly. Unit 45, suspicious person near grocery entrance. Keeping an eye. Then he stepped out of the cruiser and started toward the man. "Excuse me," Daniels said, his voice firm but not shouting. "Can I see some ID?" The man looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "I'm just waiting for a ride." "Is there a problem, officer?" Daniels frowned. "You know the rules. We have reports of recent thefts around here. I need to verify who you are." The man, steady and polite, reached for his wallet and pulled out an ID card. Daniels barely glanced at it before snapping it shut. "Step aside. I need to run a quick check." As he radioed in the name, a small crowd started to gather. Phone came out. A woman nearby whispered to her friend, "He didn't do anything wrong." But Daniels was already reaching for his handcuffs. "You're coming with me." "Wait," the man said calmly. "I haven't done anything." Daniels didn't wait to argue. The man's calm only made him more suspicious. As Daniels gripped his arm and clicked the cuffs in place, murmurs spread through the bystanders. "Is this really necessary?" one shopper asked. Daniels ignored them. He'd made his decision. At the precinct, the man sat quietly in a holding cell, unshaken by the ordeal. Officers passed by, some shaking their heads. Daniels chuckled. "Looks like he thinks it's too good to talk to us." But before Daniels could settle into his usual swagger, the door to the station opened abruptly. Chief Marcus walked in, tall and imposing, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "Where is he?" he demanded. No one answered. "Where's my nephew?" Marcus repeated, voice rising. The room went still. Daniels felt a sudden chill. "Nephew?" he muttered. The chief strode toward the holding cell, unlocking it and pulling out the man inside. He embraced him tightly, then turned to Daniels. "You arrested my family without cause," Marcus said, voice cold and steady. Daniels opened his mouth to speak, but words failed him. "I thought he looked suspicious," Daniels finally said weakly. "That's profiling," the chief shot back, "and it ends now." Daniels' world shifted in an instant. The buzz of the precinct seemed to fade away as Chief Marcus stood there, arms crossed, staring down Officer Daniels. The usually confident cop suddenly felt exposed, like a small boy caught in a lie. He shifted uncomfortably but held his ground. "My nephew," the chief repeated, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Daniels swallowed hard. "Sir, I was just doing my job. There's been a lot of crime in that area. I thought..." Marcus interrupted sharply. "You thought what? That he was guilty because of how he looks? Because he was waiting outside a store?" Daniels glanced at the man standing quietly beside the chief. The man met his gaze calmly, eyes steady and full of a quiet strength Daniels hadn't expected. "You don't know him," the chief said, his voice softer now but no less firm. "He's a lawyer, a civil rights attorney. He fights for people who have been wronged by police officers, including ones like you." Daniels felt a hot flush rise to his face. The room seemed to close in around him, the weight of his mistake settling deep in his chest. The man, Marcus's nephew, finally spoke. His voice was calm but resolute. "Officer Daniels, I understand you thought you were protecting the community, but you crossed a line. You arrested me without cause. You treated me like a criminal simply because of my skin color and where I was standing." Daniels looked away, shame washing over him. I didn't mean to." "It's not about what you meant," the nephew said quietly. "It's about what you did and the damage it causes." Chief Marcus stepped forward. "This isn't just about one wrongful arrest. It's about the trust this department needs to earn from the people we serve. You betrayed that trust today." Daniels opened his mouth but found no defense. His usual bravado had vanished. The chief's assistant entered, holding a file. "So, the internal affairs team is already reviewing the incident. They recommend suspension pending a full investigation." Marcus nodded. "That's just the beginning. I want a full report, and I want it done fast." Daniels felt his world unraveling. The badge he'd worn with pride suddenly felt heavy, like a noose tightening around his neck. As Marcus and his nephew left the room, Daniels sat down heavily, his head in his hands. He never expected that a simple arrest would change everything. The days following the arrest were a whirlwind for Officer Daniels. He sat alone in his small apartment, staring blankly at the faded police badge pinned to his dresser. The quiet hum of the city outside felt distant, as if his world had shifted to a place he no longer recognized. At the precinct, whispers followed him like shadows. Colleagues who once nodded politely now avoided his gaze. Daniel could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on him. Internal Affairs launched their investigation with a thoroughness that surprised even the chief. Every detail was scrutinized, from the initial call to the handling of the arrest. Video footage, witness statements, and phone recordings painted a clear picture. Daniels had acted without proper cause. Despite his attempt to defend himself, his excuses sounded hollow even to his own ears. The man he had wrongfully arrested, Marcus's nephew, became a symbol for something larger. The nephew, using his expertise as a civil rights attorney, began rallying community leaders and activists, turning the incident into a spotlight on police misconduct. Daniels watched helplessly as protests grew outside the precinct, banners demanding accountability and change. One morning, Chief Marcus summoned Daniels to his office. The room was quiet, but the air crackled with tension. "James," the chief began, his voice steady but firm, "I expected more from you. This department depends on officers who serve with integrity, respect, and fairness." Daniels swallowed hard. "Sir, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt anyone." Marcus's gaze was piercing. "Sorry doesn't undo what happened. We're holding you accountable. Effective immediately, you're suspended without pay pending further action." The word suspended hit Daniels like a punch to the gut. He nodded numbly, knowing this was just a start. Days later, the news broke. Officer James Daniels had been fired. No public ceremony. No farewell. Just a toast statement condemning the wrongful arrest and reaffirming the department's commitment to justice. Daniels packed his things in silence. The badge he had worn for years was taken from him, a symbol not of honor, but of disgrace. As he left the precinct for the last time, Daniels couldn't help but wonder if his career and his life would ever be the same. Weeks after Daniels' firing, the city was still buzzing with talk about the wrongful arrest. The man at the center of it all, Chief Marcus's nephew, had stepped fully into the spotlight, not as a victim, but as a warrior for justice. His name was Marcus Mark Taylor, a skilled civil rights attorney known for taking on powerful institutions and fighting for those who had been silenced. Mark's calm demeanor masked a fierce determination. He wasn't just seeking personal vindication. He was determined to expose the deeper issues within the police department. Through countless meetings with community leaders, activists, and legal teams, Mark built a comprehensive case against the department's culture of racial profiling and misconduct. James Daniels wasn't an isolated case, Mark said during a press conference. He was part of a pattern that must end. The media attention was intense. Citizens demanded accountability. Police leadership was under pressure. Daniels, meanwhile, lived with a heavy conscience. Every morning, he woke to the same question: how did I get here? He replayed the arrest again and again, realizing how his biases had clouded his judgment. The calm, polite man he'd cuffed was not a criminal but a beacon of integrity. Mark's legal team filed a formal lawsuit against the department, highlighting not only Daniel's wrongful arrest, but also the systemic issues plaguing the force. The trial became a public spectacle, sparking debates, protests, and call for reform. Daniels was called to testify. Sitting across from Mark in the courtroom was humbling. He saw not just the man he'd arrested, but the embodiment of truth and justice. Under oath, Daniels admitted his mistakes, acknowledging how his assumptions had led to a terrible injustice. The verdict was a turning point. The court ruled in favor of Mark and the plaintiff, mandating reforms in training, oversight, and accountability. Daniel's story became a cautionary tale, a painful lesson in prejudice and responsibility. Though stripped of his badge, Daniels found a new purpose, volunteering in community programs aimed at rebuilding trust between police and citizens. The twist wasn't just that the chief's nephew was an attorney. It was that justice, when pursued with courage and truth, could turn a moment of failure into a catalyst for change. Months passed since the court's ruling, and the city began to feel the ripple effects of justice. Police reforms were underway, mandatory training on racial bias, transparent disciplinary processes, and community policing initiatives designed to heal the wounds left by years of mistrust. Chief Marcus, determined to lead by example, worked tirelessly alongside activists and legal experts to rebuild the department's reputation. Mark Taylor continued his work as an attorney, but also became a bridge between law enforcement and the community. He spoke at schools, organized forums, and helped establish programs that educated officers on empathy and respect. As for James Daniels, life was no longer defined by the badge he had lost. Instead, he found purpose in a new role, mentoring young people in underserved neighborhoods, speaking openly about his mistakes, and advocating for change from outside the badge. "I was wrong," Daniel said during a community meeting. "I let my biases blind me. But if my story can help prevent someone else from feeling the pain I caused, then it's worth it." The man once arrested wrongfully had become a symbol of hope, and the officer who had arrested him had become a symbol of redemption. The city still had challenges, but a door had opened, a door to accountability, understanding, and a future where justice wasn't just a word but a lived reality. In the end, it wasn't just a story about a wrongful arrest. It was a story about the power of truth, the courage to admit fault, and the unyielding hope that change is possible, even when it seems impossible.